Tonight, I want to resolve something that has confused more sincere students of the law than almost any other question I have encountered. You have heard the instruction, let go. You have heard it from me, and you have heard it from every serious teacher of inner causation. Detach from the outcome. Surrender the result. Release your grip on the desire. And I suspect that when you heard it, some part of you felt a quiet panic, because the instruction seems to contain a contradiction. If I let go, does that not mean I am giving up? If I stop holding on, will my desire not simply fall away? If detachment is the requirement, how do I remain committed to what I want? This confusion is not a failure of understanding. It is an encounter with a genuine paradox, and paradoxes cannot be resolved by thinking harder about them. They can only be resolved by moving to a level of understanding that contains both sides of the apparent contradiction and shows them from that higher vantage point to be perfectly consistent. That is what I intend to do tonight. By the time we are finished, you will understand, not merely intellectually, but with the felt certainty that changes behavior, that letting go and remaining faithful to your assumption are not opposing movements. They are, in fact, the same movement, seen from two different angles. And when you understand how this is so, the single most common cause of failed manifestation will simply cease to operate in your experience.
What is that cause?
Holding on too tightly. And tonight, I am going to show you exactly what that means, exactly why it fails, and exactly how to release it without releasing any of the faith, any of the certainty, or any of the commitment that the law requires. Let me begin by describing with some precision what holding on too tightly looks like from the inside. Because the person doing it rarely recognizes it as a problem. They experience it as dedication, as discipline, as the natural intensity of someone who genuinely wants what they want. You assume your desire in the morning. Then you spend the day watching, checking, monitoring. You wake up, and the first movement of your mind is toward your desire. Is it here yet? Are there signs? Is anything changing? Throughout the day, your attention returns to it again and again, not with the peaceful certainty of one who knows, but with the anxious vigilance of one who fears. When will it come? How will it come? What if it doesn't come? Am I doing this correctly? Should I be imagining differently? Should I be affirming more? The desire has become a kind of occupation. It consumes significant portions of your mental and emotional energy. It creates a background of low-grade anxiety that rarely fully lifts. And paradoxically, this is the part that is difficult to accept. This very intensity of holding is precisely what is preventing the desire from manifesting. I want to show you why. Every anxious check, every fearful monitoring, every desperate return of attention to your desire carries with it a feeling. And that feeling is not the feeling of having. It is the feeling of not yet having. The feeling of one who is waiting for something that has not arrived, reaching toward something that is still at a distance, hoping for something that is not yet present. And the law of consciousness, which is a mirror of absolute fidelity, reflects that feeling back as continued experience of the very absence you are trying to end. Here is the image I want you to hold. If you take sand in your hand and grip it as tightly as you can, fist clenched, knuckles white, every muscle engaged in the effort of holding, what happens? The sand slips through, not because sand is elusive, but because the very mechanics of desperate gripping work against retention. The pressure creates gaps. The harder you squeeze, the faster it goes. But open the same hand, relax every muscle. Let the palm lie flat and easy, and the sand rests there, without effort, without loss, going nowhere. This is the mechanics of desire in consciousness. Desperate holding comes from the state of not having, and that state, maintained with the intensity of desperate attention, is what the law materializes. The open hand, the relaxed, easy, trusting openness of one who knows the sand is there and does not need to clench to keep it. That is the state of having. And that state is what the law materializes. This is why letting go is not a sacrifice. It is the most precise and effective thing you can do. Before I teach you how to let go, I must draw a line with great care, because the failure to understand this distinction is what makes people afraid of the instruction in the first place. Giving up looks like this. You abandon the desire. You decide it is not possible for you. You return to the old state, the state in which this particular thing is not yours and perhaps never will be. You accept lack as your settled condition. You stop imagining, stop assuming, stop feeling the wish fulfilled, and resign yourself to the present facts as though they were permanent. Giving up is the dissolution of the assumption itself. It is retreat. Letting go looks like this. You release the desperate grip on how and when the desire will manifest, while holding the assumption about what with complete and unshaken certainty. You stop monitoring and checking and anxiously watching, while remaining entirely faithful to the inner state of the wish fulfilled. You surrender the need to see physical evidence right now, while knowing, with a knowing that requires no evidence, that in consciousness the thing is already done. Do you see the difference? It is not a small one. When you give up, you abandon the state. When you let go, you release the anxiety around the state, while the state itself remains intact. In fact, it becomes more stable, more natural, more genuinely inhabited, because the desperate effort of holding has ceased, and what remains is simply the quiet, certain knowledge of what is. Let me offer you a comparison that may help. You know that you have two hands. You are not anxious about this. You do not check periodically to confirm that your hands are still there. You do not lie awake at night worried that by morning they might be gone. You do not spend your days monitoring your hands for signs that they continue to exist. You simply know, with a completeness so total that it never rises to the level of conscious thought, that you have your hands. This is the state of having something so fully that the question of whether you have it does not even arise. This is the state of consciousness I am pointing toward, not the performed confidence of one who is trying very hard to believe, not the strained affirmation of one who is fighting doubt with willpower, the simple, unremarkable, taken for granted knowing of one who possesses what they possess. That state is letting go, that state is the open hand, and that state is precisely the one from which the law creates. Let me now be specific about the mechanics of this, what exactly you are releasing and what exactly you're holding, because the confusion about letting go usually comes from not having this distinction clearly in mind. You are releasing the how. The how is the pathway, the particular sequence of events, the specific people, the exact circumstances through which you imagine your desire must come to you. When you hold on too tightly, you inevitably develop a theory about how the manifestation will arrive. The money will come through this opportunity. The relationship will begin through this meeting. The healing will come through this treatment. And you begin, often without fully realizing it, to monitor that specific pathway for signs of progress, effectively limiting the infinite intelligence of your own deeper mind to the narrow corridor of your finite imagination. But consciousness does not need your help finding the path. It is operating at a level of awareness and creativity that the surface mind cannot approach. It knows pathways that are invisible to you. It can arrange circumstances you could not have planned, bring people you have not yet met, create openings in situations that appear entirely closed. When you release the how, when you stop insisting that your desire must arrive through the particular door you are watching, you allow the whole infinite range of possibility to be available. And consciousness, being what it is, will find the shortest and most elegant route. You are also releasing the when. Time is the thing the anxious mind is most attached to, and the thing consciousness is least constrained by. The deeper mind does not operate on clock time. It operates on the time of maturity, the natural interval between a seed's planting and its harvest, which is determined not by your impatience, but by the conditions required for the thing to fully form. Every moment you spend calculating how long it has been, comparing your timeline against what you expected, measuring the gap between where you are and where you want to be, every one of those moments is a moment spent in the state of not yet. And the law faithfully creates more not yet. Release the when. Not by ceasing to care about your desire, but by recognizing that in consciousness, in the only realm where creation actually takes place, your desire is not in the future at all. It is already done. The physical manifestation will arrive at the moment of its maturity, and that moment is determined by the law, not by your watching. And finally, and this is the deepest and most important release, you are releasing the need. The need is the belief that you cannot be complete, cannot be at peace, cannot be fully yourself until and unless the physical manifestation arrives. When you hold this belief, however unconsciously, you are anchoring yourself in incompleteness. Every moment without the physical manifestation becomes evidence of your lack. The absence of the outer thing becomes the defining fact of your inner state. Let go of the need. Not by ceasing to want. Wanting is entirely appropriate, entirely human, entirely part of the creative process. But by recognizing that your completeness is not contingent on the arrival of any particular outer form, you are already complete. The awareness that you are, the consciousness in which your entire life is occurring, is not diminished by the absence of any circumstance. What you desire will be a wonderful addition to a life that is already whole. It is not the missing piece without which you cannot function. When you release the how, the when, and the need, what remains? The pure, clean, unencumbered assumption of the wish fulfilled, resting in consciousness with the naturalness of something that simply is. That is what you are keeping, and that is all you need. I want to give you two images tonight that I believe will do more for your practical understanding of this principle than any amount of further explanation. The first is the Sabbath. In Scripture, after 6 days of creation, God rested. This is not a story about fatigue. God does not grow tired. This is a story about the completion of work and the appropriate response to completed work, which is not continued effort but rest. The seventh day is the day of knowing that what was created in the preceding 6 is real, is finished, is established. It is the day of trusting the creation to be what it is, without further intervention. When you plant your desire in consciousness, when you assume the wish fulfilled with genuine feeling and genuine acceptance, you have done your creative work. The seed is in the ground. The work is complete. What the Sabbath requires of you now is not more effort, not more technique, not more anxious supervision of the process. What it requires is rest, the rest of one who knows the work is done, the rest of one who has no need to return to the field and interfere with what is growing undisturbed in the dark. This rest is not passivity. It is not indifference. It is the most active possible expression of faith. Because faith, when it is genuine, looks exactly like rest. The one who is truly certain does not pace and worry and check. The one who is truly certain lives in the ordinary fullness of their life while the law does what the law does. The second image is the farmer. A farmer plants seeds and this is the crucial thing, he leaves them alone. He does not return to the field the next morning and dig them up to check whether they have sprouted. He does not stand over the soil demanding evidence of germination. He does not conclude, because the surface of the earth is unchanged, that nothing is happening beneath it. He knows, with the practical, unsentimental certainty of one who has planted before, that the process is underway, that it will complete on its own timetable, and that his interference would only damage what is growing. This is the attitude I am asking you to cultivate toward your desire. Not the attitude of one who has given up. The farmer has not given up on his harvest. Not the attitude of one who is indifferent. The farmer cares deeply about his harvest. But the attitude of one who has done the necessary work and now trusts the law to complete what the work has initiated. Water the seed when it needs water. Tend the soil when it needs tending. But do not dig it up to check. Do not stand over it with anxious eyes. Do not measure daily whether it has grown. Plant, and then rest, and then live your life, and watch the harvest arrive in its season. Let me now give you something entirely practical, a daily structure for moving from desperate holding to the open hand, from anxious monitoring to peaceful certainty. In the morning, before your feet touch the floor and before the day's concerns fully arrive, take 3 minutes, just 3, and in those 3 minutes, assume your desire as already fulfilled. Not as something you are reaching toward, as something you are resting in. Feel the quality of your life from inside the wish fulfilled. Not the ecstatic peak of the moment of arrival, but the ordinary, settled, taken for granted quality of a life in which this particular thing is simply present. Find that feeling, inhabit it for 3 minutes, and then release it. Let it go. Set the assumption the way you would set a compass bearing, and then stop staring at the compass. Throughout the day, live fully. This is not a passive instruction, this is the practice. Go to your work and be present in it. Spend time with the people in your life and be genuinely there. Pursue the things that interest and sustain you. Engage with the ordinary texture of your actual days. When your mind drifts to your desire, and it will, do not suppress the thought, but do not feed it anxiety either. Simply notice, it is done, the seed is planted, I trust the law, and return to whatever you were doing. The capacity to return to your life without obsessing is the sign that you are in the state of having, not the state of lacking. In the evening before sleep, which is the most important threshold of the day for the work of consciousness, do two things. First, revise. If the day brought circumstances that seem to contradict your assumption, revise them in your imagination. Not to deny what happened, but to rewrite your inner response to it. To see yourself in the revision as one who moved through those circumstances from the state of the wish fulfilled, with the ease and certainty of someone who knows. Second, release. Consciously set down whatever anxiety the day accumulated. Say inwardly with genuine feeling, I release the how, I release the when, I release the need to see this tonight. The work is done. I rest. Then enter sleep from the assumption, gently, naturally, the way you sink into a familiar chair. Repeat this day after day. Not with the desperate intensity of one who is trying to make something happen, but with the quiet consistency of one who is tending what is already growing. One further thing, a simple test for where you are. If someone asks you about your desire and you feel the familiar grip of anxiety, the sudden tightening, the rush of checking thoughts, the urgency of when will it be here, you are still holding on too tightly. But if someone asks you about your desire and what you feel is a quiet warmth, a settled knowing, a sense of yes, that's coming, it's fine, I trust it, you have found the open hand. That second feeling is not indifference. It is not giving up. It is precisely the state of peaceful certainty from which the law creates. Practice moving toward that second feeling every day, in the morning and the evening, and in the small moments in between. Not by forcing it, not by performing it, but by genuinely releasing what does not belong to the state of having. The anxiety, the monitoring, the desperate grip, the desire itself. Keep that. The assumption, hold it with everything you are. The certainty that it is done, let that be unshakable. Everything else, let go. I said at the beginning that this is a paradox, and I want to close by showing you that it is, in the end, not paradoxical at all. It only appeared so because we were looking at it from the wrong level. The desperate holding and the peaceful certainty are not two strategies for achieving the same thing. They are two entirely different states of consciousness. The desperate holding is the state, and the law faithfully manifests lack. The peaceful certainty is the state of having, and the law faithfully manifests having. What changes when you move from one to the other is not your commitment to your desire. It is not your faith in the law. It is not your assumption of the wish fulfilled. What changes is only the feeling from which you hold all of these. And since feeling is the creative medium, changing the feeling changes everything. Let go of the desperate grip. Keep the assumption. Let go of the anxious monitoring. Keep the knowing. Let go of the need for physical proof. Keep the certainty that in consciousness it is already done. Open your hand. The sand will not fall. It never had to be gripped. It was always already resting in your palm. This is Neville Lectures. I'll see you again in the next video.